Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. This video is going to be the continuation of my War Magic videos. So we're looking at spells from Pathfinder that are of the lower level. So typically 1 through 5, but I've extended it to 6 level. So 1 through 6 level spells and seeing how applicable they are to used in a battlefield or in an area effect to take out traditional military combat situations that were in medieval battles. So, the lines of soldiers fighting each other, the guys on horseback, ship to ship combat, things of that nature, sieging a castle. So, with that, I have recently finished looking through the core rule book for the divine spells 1 through 6 and the arcane spells 1 through 6. We are in the advanced player's guide today for Pathfinder 1E. We're going to look through their spells. This is going to be the arcane spells today. And I'm going to, unless this video goes real long, I'm going to look through 1 through 6 level spells of arcane in this one video from this book. So without further ado, let's start looking at the spells that the arcane have access to in the advanced player's guide and see if there's any new or interesting ways we could use these spells for a change in a battlefield scenario. So spells are on 188. Okay, the Bard, Druid, Cleric, Elemental Wizard, so they've done the Elemental Wizard for this book. Maybe I should have looked at that first. I am not seeing any new spells. Here you go, Sorcerer and Wizard spells. There you go. So page 198, guys. 0 level spell, Spark, ignites flammable objects. That'd be useful to start a fire. If you start a fire for your line of oil that you have out there on the battlefield. But other than that, that's not a very useful spell. And it's a 0 level spell, so you're not expecting it to be, wow, this will change a combat. So first level, Sorcerer and Wizard spells. You have Alter Winds, increases and decreases the strength of natural winds. Well, that can affect how archery works, so that'd be very useful. That could also affect how ships are traveling, so that'd be very useful. Ant Haul, triple carrying capacity of a creature. That could be useful if you could give it to a massive group, because now they can carry more supplies, they can carry more ammo in the sense of like cannonballs and so on and so forth. Break gives an object the broken condition. That won't be very useful unless you're using it as a strike force to damage the enemy's siege weapons. I can see it being useful then. So if you say put that on a bead that needs to impact a siege weapon or impact something to give it the broken condition, you throw that on a door, the door now has a broken condition, so now it has hardly any hit points, and if you do enough damage, it'll open. So that could be very useful. Crafter's Curse, -5 on craft skill checks. Crafter's Fortune, +5 on craft checks. Battlefield wise, those aren't very useful. Now if you're sabotaging their ability to make things, that could be useful. If you're increasing your ability to make things, that could be useful. But like I said, in the actual application on the battlefield, it wouldn't be useful. Dancing Lanterns. If you're very creative, dancing lanterns could be used to scare a bunch of superstitious soldiers. Expeditious excavation moves 5 foot cubes of earth. That could be very good, making trenches, setting up pitfalls. I can see that being very useful very quickly. Flare burst, but affects all creatures within 10 feet. Cool. That could be useful. That would, if you launch, say, a bead with flare burst on it and it hits a shield, the impact causing it to go off, you don't even have to hit the first row. You could hit the second row, and all of a sudden everyone in the second row back's blinded. Gravity bow. Arrows do damage as though one size category bigger. That is an awesome spell. I need to make sure my archer in my game knows about that spell because I was not aware of that spell. So you combine that with, say, the ability to shrink a ammunition from, say, a ballista down to an arrow, and then you fire it with the gravity bow, it does more damage. Then it goes back to the size of a ballista bolt. It does even more damage. That could be very useful. Hydraulic push, wave of water, bull rushes an enemy. If you needed to separate yourself from the enemies, that could be useful. If you need to push their ship away from you, that could be useful. Memory lapse, subject forgets events back to last turn. I'm not sure that would be useful. Sculpt corpse, makes corpse look like another creature. If you needed to fake your death, that would be useful. But, or if you needed to fake the death of somebody else, or you wanted to sabotage somebody else by presenting them as a imposter by using a corpse to fake their death, that would be useful. Stone fist, your unarmed strikes are lethal. Stumble gap, small hole trips creatures. You do that in a few places, and a marching army can't march in a shield formation. That could be very useful. Touch of gracelessness. That's an individual target. Lowers their dex, which is useful, but it's an individual target. Unless you could apply that to a mass, to, say, apply it to the archers, it's not going to be that great for a battlefield. Touch of the sea, swim speed becomes 30 feet. That'd be great for your strike force, so your actual PCs going in to sabotage stuff. But for your army, unless you can apply that, say, as potions and give everybody a swim speed of 30 feet, it won't be that useful. But alternatively, if you could do it as potions, it wouldn't be that expensive because it's a first level spell. You could all of a sudden march your army across a sea. They'd be lightly equipped by the time they got to their side, but as far as an intimidation factor goes, if they are not expecting you to be able to get there at all and you're there, that intimidates the hell out of a lot of people. Vanish, as invisibility for 1 round per level. That might not actually be very useful. It could be useful for your PCs, but not useful for the combat. Now let's dive into the second level, arcane spells. Accelerate poison, hastens target poison's onset. If you wanted people to take more poison damage, an individual to take more poison damage, that would work, because this says target, so one person. Arrow eruption creates duplicates of killing arrow. I want to read that spell, so let's look that one up. Arrow eruption. It's a standard action, range long 400 feet plus 40 feet per level, area 30-foot radius. You create exact duplicates of the arrow or crossbow bolt you used to kill a creature in the previous round, and launch one at an enemy creatures within 30-foot radius of the corpse. You can target 1 creature per caster level, maximum 15, within range of the burst, and must make a single attack roll and apply it to each arrow. These duplicates arrows possess all the intrinsic magical properties of the arrow that killed the original creature, as well as those possessed passed on to it by your bow. They also enjoy the full benefit of any bonuses or modifiers you apply to the attack from other magical items, feats, and class or racial features. However, this spell cannot reproduce any spells or other limited use magical effects that you use to enhance that particular attack. So that includes such effects like True Strike. Or any area effects you might have used with Arcane Archer's Imbue Arrow class feature. Okay. But that could be useful. You kill a target in the shield wall, and then you duplicate that killing arrow for an area, and all of a sudden that shield wall takes a lot of damage. Burning Gaze. Inflict 1d6 fire damage to creature by looking at it to a single creature. Okay. Create Pit. Creates an extra dimensional pit. That can be useful. You can kind of control where the military's moving. Now, if it's not a very big pit, then you need multiples of them. Create Treasure Map. That isn't that great unless you're encountering something in the wild and you know that its lair would have treasure. With that, you could use the Create Treasure Map with its hide and get the location of where its treasure is. But it's also what it considers valuable. So you'd also, certain creatures wouldn't consider the treasure you'd be seeking, gold, gems, and whatnot, as valuable. So that they might have beads or their babies or whatever. Dust of Twilight. Black particles extinguish light sources within an area. If you're fighting at night and you all have low light vision or dark vision and your enemies do not, that is a very useful spell. Elemental Speech enables you to speak to elementals and some creatures. As a spell, that is useful. As a spell for combat, that is not as useful. Elemental Touch. Gain energy, damage, touch attack. Fire Breath. Exhale a cone of flame at will. That could be useful depending upon the size of the cone. I would assume as a second level spell it's not very big, but I could be wrong. Let's look that one up. Fire Breath. Range 15 feet, so yeah, not a very big cone. But everything within the 15 feet would take the fire damage, so, and it's a cone effect, so it's 15 feet wide at the end, 10 feet wide, 5 feet wide, so. Glide, you take no falling damage, move 60 feet per round while falling. Essentially, that is a higher level version of Featherfall. Share Language, subject understands chosen language. Slipstream, wave boosts creature's speed. Stone Call, 2d6 damage to all creatures in area. So no, Stone Call might be very effective for a military, but so far most of this is not. So let's look at the third level arcane spells. Aqueous Orb creates a rolling sphere of water. That just reminds me of Fire Orb, so I would assume, and I could be wrong, that it does the same damage and the same effects, just water or ice. Blood Biography. Learn about a creature with its blood. Useful if you're trying to get information, but as far as a military setting goes, not great way to get information. Campfire Wall creates a shelter around a campfire. If you're being attacked, that could be useful. But unless you have access to do that multiple times, that would only protect like a small force of your forces, so might not be that great. Cloak of Winds creates a screen of wind around you. evolution. Target Eidolon temporarily loses 1 evolution. That wouldn't be beneficial unless your enemy is using a lot of Eidolons. Draconic Reservoir. Subject can absorb energy damage and enhance melee attacks with it. I like the idea of that, but I don't see that unless you have access to giving this to multiple of your soldiers. So one use item that they have, like a potion that they could drink, where they could sit there and then take fire damage from oncoming fire and then redirect it. Elemental Aura creates an aura of energy around you. That could be useful because your enemies have to get close to it. Let me see how that one works. Okay, once per round. Reflex half. Forms energy around you, damaging all those that come near you. Choose an energy type: acid, cold, electric, or fire. Creatures adjacent to you when this spell is cast and at the start of your turn take 2d6 points of energy damage of the selected type. And there's extra effects based on the type. Cool. That would be very beneficial if you wanted to cause the enemies to have pause before attacking, or to cause them to scatter instead of being in that line formation. Enter image transfers your conscious to an object bearing your likeness. That could be a lot of fun story-wise, but it wouldn't help you in a military setting. Hydraulic torrent creates a torrent of water that bull rushes any creature in its path. Well, if you need to control where your enemy is, that could be useful. Pain Strike inflicts 1d6 non-lethal damage once per round. I would assume that's a single target. And that would not be beneficial unless you needed to capture somebody alive. So for your strike force, that's useful. For your military as a whole, not as much. Seek Thoughts, detect thinking creatures' thoughts. Shifting Sand creates difficult terrain and erases tracks. Can carry along some creatures and objects. I would assume that one's not going to be great unless you're worried about being tracked. Spike Pit has Create Pit, but filled with spikes. So that's going to have a lot of uses. Not only does it cause your enemy forces to now have pits in front of them, anyone that fell in takes spike damage as well as fall damage. Twilight Knife, floating knife attacks with you. Versatile weapon, weapon bypasses some DR. So overall, most of these are not that great for a big military campaign. Big military battle. Let's go into 4th level spells. Acid Pit creates a pit with a layer of acid on the bottom. So like Spike Pit, but with acid on the bottom. So that could be great because not only do they take damage falling down and then take damage landing in the acid, they take damage standing in the acid trying to get out of the pit. Ball Lightning. Flying balls of lightning deal 3d6 electrical damage each. Since it says multiple there, I would assume that you would get a few attacks out of it, so you could drop a few people, and that could really help you deter the enemy. Calcific Touch. Touch attack slows target, 1d4 dex damage. That's an individual. Now, if you put that on ranged weapons, that would be very useful. You hit a section of the army, and now they can't move as fast as the rest. Detonate inflicts 1d8 per level energy damage to all creatures within 15 feet. That's a bomb going off. That's useful. That would do minor wounds to the military. The new guys would be destroyed by that almost instantly as long as you rolled higher than a 4. Dragon's Breath gives you a Dragon's Breath weapon. if you pick a big area like a cone or a line and you position yourself correctly, that could work great. If you could give that as one-use items, say, I give you this little wooden horn and you blow on it and it creates that dragon's breath. That would take out an area of soldiers, an area of soldiers, an area of soldiers. You only need to give a handful out to your military, and all of a sudden now the enemy's forces are destroyed to the point where they can't fight. They'd have to retreat and reform. They wouldn't have to retreat far to reform, but they'd have to retreat from the initial combat area and reform their forces to be able to fight you again. Firefall causes fire to burst up, dealing 2d6 fire damage. Let's look that one up. Long range, so the range is already good on this. 400 feet plus 40 feet per level. One fire source up to 20-foot cube. So the fire, it needs to use an active fire source, but the fire source is extinguished after the casting of the spell and its effects. The coruscating rain of fire fills a hemispherical burst with a radius of 60 feet. All creatures and objects in the area take 5d6 points of fire damage to catch on fire. That would wipe out most normal soldiers, considering they're not going to be as powerful as your players. And if you were within 120 feet of the original fire source, you have to make a save or be blinded for 1d4 plus 1 rounds. So if you could do that as a one-use item, take this, again, bead, take this arrowhead, whatever, shoot this into a fire source that you see there. Torches on a wall, sconces. If you could fly, you could drop it into the fire source in the courtyard, whatever. It could do massive amounts of damage. There's lots of applications to this. Hell, you could drop it with a fire source. Or you could drop a fire source first and then drop it. I could see that being very useful. Moonstruck. Subject is enraged and confused. Not going to be that useful. River of Wind. A stream of wind causes non-lethal damage and can knock down or push creatures. That could be useful because I can also control ranged attacks while that wind's there. Shadow projection. Temporarily become a shadow. That's useful for an individual, but not for the whole military unless you can apply it to the whole military. If everyone temporarily becomes a shadow, now they can move into the enemy's courtyard and then start attacking. So defenses become an issue if that can be used on a massive scale. And that being a 4th level spell, that would be more expensive to put as one-use items, but it's far cheaper than making permanent items. So weigh it as it is, but if you wanted to really confuse an enemy, that would be a way to do it. True Form removes polymorph effects. If you see an enemy change forms on the battlefield and you saw gesturing and casting, I would use the True Form to counter that. So as a spellcaster, I'd need to keep a scroll or two of that, but outside of that, I don't see that being greatly useful. Wandering Star Motes. Outlines subject and produces light as a sun rod. Very intriguing, but not that useful. 5th level, arcane spells. Fire Snake creates a serpentine path of fire 5 foot long per level that deals 1d6 fire damage per level. That's great because that can go in and out of their shield wall, taking out sections of their shield wall. If they move back into it, move beside it, whatever, they get burned really bad by it. So that could be very useful. Geyser creates a geyser of boiling water. There again, that's probably a nice area effect. I'm going to look it up. If so, that would, again, be very great for a tightly packed military formation. Long range, so already it has the range you want it to have, 400 feet plus 40 foot per level. And it's a spout of boiling water filling a 5-foot square and spraying upwards 10 foot per level. If you're within 50 foot, 25 foot, you take damage from this. If you enter the same space, you get a save or take a lot of damage from this. It does a d6 fire damage each round, droplets of boiling water cascading on them. It's 20 foot, 5 foot radius for the actual radius. So that could be very useful. That would definitely do a lot of damage to a tightly packed military formation. Hungry Pit has Create Pit, but dealing 4d6 points of damage to those in it as it closes. Ooh, that's just brutal. If you could get a few of those to open up, say put them on the ends of the arrows and sling bullets, whatever, and chuck them at the enemy, and when it impacts, it creates the pit, and then the pit closes after the guys fall in, you're definitely taking out sections and traumatizing the soldiers. Life Bubble protects creatures from sustained environmental effects. I could think of a lot of uses for it. If you could give that to your military and there's weird gases and stuff going on, that would work. Or poisonous gases or smoke clouds, so on and so forth. You get what I'm saying. Pain Strike Mass as pain, but affects multiple creatures. That would work. Phantasmal Web catches subjects in illusionary web. Now that's just hilarious because it's illusionary. But I see that being very useful. Planar Adaptation, resist harmful effects of other planes. That's not useful in a military setting unless you're doing war on other planes. And even so, if you're doing that, at that point you need to have that as permanent items for your military. Suffocation, target quickly suffocates to death. That could be a good intimidation factor, especially if you pick the biggest target and they fail their save and they suffocate to death. Treasure Stitching, objects on clothes become embroidered. That is great if you are, say, like a thief. But I don't see that for military use unless you're trying to transport, unless it allows you to transport big items like siege weapons and stuff. So let's go look at that. You can transform all objects placed on the cloth into an embroidered two-dimensional representation, making it easy for you to store and transport them. You can pile any amount of weight of objects on the cloth so long as the pile stays within the dimensions of the cloth, up to 10 cubic feet. When you cast a spell, the entire pile disappears into the cloth, replaced by a highly accurate sewn picture of the pile from whatever angle you wish. The cloth retains its normal weight and dimensions. If you can restore the pile of objects at any time as full round action by unfurling the cloth and ordering the spell to end, consuming the cloth. Anyone else wishing to restore the objects must successfully dispel your spell. If the cloth is destroyed or is significantly damaged, all objects held within the cloth are lost. This spell cannot affect artifacts or other sorts of similarly unique items. That'd be very useful. You could put a siege engine on it, say a small ballista, so on and so forth. So you could sit there, or a very heavy mounted crossbow, something that would be heavier than what would be standard rules for a person to hold and fire, something they'd have to actually mount on something to fire. So the stage between a ballista and a heavy crossbow. So that could be very useful for transporting stuff. You could load it up with cannonballs, transport all the cannonballs with no weight. And then you just roll out one cloth, say the word, and now all of a sudden you got a bunch of ammo. Roll out another cloth, say the word, now you got a bunch of ammo. Roll out another cloth, say the word, now you got a bunch of kegs of black powder. Roll out the cloth while you're in the air, say the words, now you're dropping a bunch of kegs of black powder. This can get very devastating very quickly. I like that spell. So let's do the 6th level spells, and that'll end today's video. This video is a lot longer than I thought I was going to make it, but that's okay. Cloak of Dreams. Creatures within 5 feet fall asleep. Since it's multiple targets, that would be very useful. Contagious Flame. Scorching Ray causes 4d6 fire damage, then moves on to new targets. That'd be very useful. Enemy Hammer allows you to telekinetically use a creature as a weapon. That'd be very funny. Fluid Form. Gain DR 10 to slashing, increasing reach 10 feet, and breathe water. If you put that on a raging creature, say from other earlier videos where you summon an elemental or you summon a big creature like a rhino or whatnot, and then cast that on it, that would allow it to even do more massive damage. Getaway teleports you and select creatures to predetermined location. That'd be like your return home spell in a video game. That could be useful on a retreat, or on a heist, or on a spy mission, and what assassination attempt, so on and so forth. So your strike team, your PCs would have better use of that than anyone else. But if you did that as one-use items, your whole military could go from the battlefield back to their home base in the heart of their country like there was nothing, like they weren't even there the whole time they were there. Sirocco. Hot Wind deals 46 damage, fatigues those damaged, and knocks creatures prone. That would be very useful. Most of your military soldiers are between 1st and 5th level that are on in your standard military, so that's going to possibly kill at least a third of the military, if not more, because your higher level soldiers usually are in less numbers. Unwilling Shield. Subject shares wounds you receive. Not going to be that great unless you can affect more than one of their people, but I can make use of that as a player very easily. Pick the biggest guy, go, okay, anytime you hit me, my low AC, you take damage. I might take damage too, but this is going to hurt you a lot, I hope. Well, there is all the spells, 1st through 6th level arcane. We will do divine next week. I will do cleric, then druid, or I might have to divide this up as just doing the cleric ones and then just doing the druid ones. It depends if I want to do another almost 40-minute video or not. Well, until we meet again, guys, have fun.